Hey guys, how's it going? It's Al. Week 13 of Daily Fantasy NFL is here, and I've got a first look video for you for DraftKings Week 13. If you wanted the Thanksgiving first look, that is another video. Go check that one out. We have one for the 3-game slate that's already posted to YouTube. Definitely check that game out if you're playing, or that video out if you're playing the 3-game slate for Thanksgiving. This is for the 11-game main slate on Sunday. Millionaire Maker, Slant, all the big tournaments that you love. Your head-to-heads, your 50-50s, your double-ups. Everything else is absolutely right here in this video for you. We're going to take a look, going position by position at all the different players that I want to try and roster this week. We're going to look at different prices and see where people are and see if we can come up with a kind of a process developed first look lineup. Now, when I say process developed first look lineup, it for me basically means that I kind of want to probably pay down at quarterback unless there's a ton of value on a slate already on Monday when I'm recording this. We probably want to pay down at tight end as well. We want to pay up to try and get our 70-ish touches from the 2 running backs and the running back that we're going to play in the flex, and find some wide receivers that might have some value, that might get some volume, that are in a good matchup. And we're going to plug a 3K defense kind of randomly that I just don't care about to get us there. So if you'd be so kind, drop a like on the video. Make sure that you subscribe to the channel and ring that notifications bell, because as you guys know, I push out a ton of content during NFL season. And if you're new to the channel, I don't want you to miss any of it. So please, by all means, ring that bell and let's get to this video. Quarterback, as I said, I want to pay down, but we are going to discuss the high dollar guys as well. Patrick Mahomes against Oakland, who has been pretty bad at defending the pass so far this year. And the Chiefs have been pretty good at throwing the football both this year and last year with Patrick Mahomes at the helm. They were pretty good the year before that as well, with Alex Smith leading the charge. The move to Patrick Mahomes just turned them into a fully functional battle station, and they're just absolutely off the charts amazing at this point. He's coming off of a bad game. We've seen Patrick Mahomes regress a little bit, something that we spoke about during preseason. And I believe it was week 3 that we had a lengthy discussion on Twitch, where I record every single one of these videos. By all means, come by the stream and visit us. There's a link down below in the description. I stream 6 days a week during NFL season. Would love to get to know you. And it's much easier to do that if you're kind of hanging out in the chat, as opposed to just kind of typing a comment here or there in the YouTube comments. So Patrick Mahomes, I think that he's perfect for tournaments, right? Great tournament play this week. Going to be tough to fit in cash optimally to get to pay up at the other positions that we want to pay up for, because a ceiling game from a quarterback outside of like a ridiculous all-timer game, right, is sitting like between 30 and 35 points. Now, he's done that multiple times this year, 4 times, in fact, that he's ended up there, right? Once 2 weeks ago against Tennessee, where he had 32 points. But you can find quarterbacks that are 5K, 5,500, 5,800 that are going to get you a 25 to 28 point day. And that spread in the quarterback scoring is why we tend to pay down at quarterback, to try and find those guys at other positions, at running back and at wide receiver, where there's a much wider spread between 5 and 45 points. It's much easier for tight ends, wide receivers, and running backs to get you a 28 to 45 point game than it is for a quarterback. And you can usually find other quarterbacks that do that. So the number 1 quarterback to the 10th highest scoring quarterback, not that big of a spread in points scored for fantasy, but in running back and wide receiver, the number 1 to the number 10 guy, much wider range there. So you have to have those 30 plus guys in your lineups at those other positions if you want to win. So Patrick Mahomes, great tournament play for me if you're stacking either Kansas City, stacking with a single or 2 players on Kansas City, or if you're using him with 1 or 2 players with a bring back from Oakland, whether it's going to be Jacobs or Williams or Waller. Lamar Jackson doesn't really need to be stacked, faces his toughest competition yet in this game, coming up against San Francisco. What is the total in this game, guys? We got a 46 total. Ravens favored by 4.5 here. What can you say? He's the highest scoring player of the year. He's got the highest floor of any quarterback. He faces the toughest defense, in my opinion, in the league this year. The San Francisco 49ers doing everything right on defense, and actually doing a lot of things correct on offense, both from a real life and a fantasy perspective. Lamar Jackson brings a different skill set to the table. I think that you can play him I do think that you can play Lamar Jackson. I just think that there's better quarterbacks out there in terms of salary and in terms of roster construction. But if you're building tournament lineups and want to have Lamar Jackson in there, there's no way I'm going to fault you. And very condensed group of players that end up on the receiving end of his touchdowns. So easy to stack player. Also, you can play Lamar Jackson without stacking him. He's fine to run out there as a naked quarterback without having to play somebody like Hollywood Brown, without having to play somebody like Andrews or his tight end, because being very honest, he can do it and not have a touchdown or a multiple touchdown game. We've seen games like this where he has 4 touchdowns or 3 touchdowns or 5 touchdowns, but he's also had games 0 touchdowns, 1 touchdown, 0, 0, 1, where if you stacked him with a receiver, it didn't necessarily pay off. So there are some quarterbacks that you can run out there naked in tournaments. Lamar Jackson is certainly one of them. Aaron Rodgers against the Giants. We don't have the old Aaron Rodgers, guys. We just don't. And some of it could come down to age regression, where he's just he's older now, and he's just not the same quarterback that he was before on a consistent week in, week out basis. He can put it up in one game, as we saw against Kansas City and against Oakland. But it also comes down to the way that they're running this offense. It also comes down to the fact that we haven't seen the touchdown upside from somebody like Adams, who I think is very much in play for this week, as he's just too cheap as a result. But 18 touchdowns and 2 interceptions. Aaron Rodgers is still having a fine year. It's just different that he's not having that great a consistent year for fantasy, where he's ranging now from basically 10 fantasy points up to 30 fantasy points, whether it's a game where they got blown out against San Francisco after a bye, or there's a game before the bye against Carolina where he had 10 fantasy points in a win. So if you want to play him in tournaments, if you're going to play a lot of Davante Adams this week and you want to have him as your quarterback stack in those games, fine. But I think that Adams is fine without Rodgers in there. Kyler Murray comes off of a bye week, playing at home against the Rams, their first meeting of the year. Kyler Murray's been outstanding. Love the fact that they're mixing him in on the ground a lot more. Again, this is another quarterback that you can stack but don't have to if you want to play him naked. That's fine with me. The price is up, though, about $6,400. Kind of dissuades me from wanting to play him in cash. Jameis Winston is likely to throw touchdowns to his own wide receivers as he is to the opposing team. So he's probably the only team in the league that I would use in a tournament with the opposing defense and a stacked player from his own team. I'm probably going to limit my Jameis Winston stacks to 1 of his pass catchers and not 2, like I am willing to do with some other players, other quarterbacks, because he tends to zero in on one guy. Last week it was Godwin. The week before that was Evans. A couple weeks before that was Evans for like a 3-week span. Then it was Brate for a week. He kind of gets locked in tunnel vision on one guy. So I would suggest stacking with one player, not multiple. Cleveland goes up against Pittsburgh for the second time in a couple of weeks. And you guys remember Helmet Gate from a few weeks ago. This game could be highly charged. And Baker against Pittsburgh put up a solid game, but now he's 900 more. We saw him connect against Miami, but everybody connects against Miami with all of his wide receivers. We definitely know that he's got the guys to do it on the receiving end. I'd rather play the receivers than to play Baker in this spot. I might have a few shares of Baker Mayfield, but probably not going to lean heavily on him. Sam Darnold in this offense for the Jets has done exceptionally well the last few weeks, trending massively upwards. 31 DraftKings points for him because he added a rushing touchdown against Oakland. 30 points, 34 points exactly in the last 3 games for the Jets. This is the Jets offense that I was kind of banking on in the offseason. I thought that Darnold was going to take a leap this year. Unfortunately, he got sick at the beginning of the year and missed multiple games. But now he's back, and this is a team that could trend this direction. As we've said, they're trending in the right way since Darnold got back and has gotten healthier. I'm interested to see what they're going to do the rest of the season. Sam Darnold most certainly in play against Cincinnati's horrible defense, especially with the pass catching ability of his running back. Jared Goff against Arizona. We've streamed players against Arizona all year. We're not going to stop now, although they are playing slower. Their defense really can't stop anybody, and Goff does have the ability to throw for 20 to 25 points. He's priced down to $6K, coming off of 2 bad games in week 10 and 11. I don't have the Monday Night Football game for week 12 because they haven't played it yet. We record this. It's 11:45 in the morning on Monday when we're recording this. So we'll see if he has a bounce back game on Monday night. And it may convince people, if he has a good game against Baltimore in a high scoring environment, to want to play him more against Arizona. But it is another tough matchup. If it's a bad spot, it might hold down his ownership against Arizona, but the field is getting too sharp to know that even if he had a bad game against Arizona and Chicago and Pittsburgh, 3 straight really tough defenses, that they're not going to fade him against Arizona. So it'll hold the ownership down a little bit with casuals, but realistically speaking, quarterback ownership doesn't matter that much, but the rest of the offense does. So I expect this offense to be very highly owned against Arizona. It's going to be a matter of how we can plug those pieces in. Getting down to the player that I really want to play this week, Ryan Tannehill's been good. He's not the player that I really want to play this week, but he's been exceptionally good since taking over this offense. He is somebody that we're going to have to consider, but this is a lower totaled game than one that I want to go after. But Nick Foles going up against Tampa Bay, the streamer that we love to stream against, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers defense, is one that reverse funnels and forces you to not run the ball but throw it. And now we have Nick Foles back following 2 games where he threw it 48 and 47 times at Tennessee and at Indy. Now he goes back home against a much softer pass defense, albeit a solid defense, with a great pass catching running back. Now, I can't believe I'm saying that about Leonard Fournette, but that's who he is. And with the other weapons that they have on this offense on the outside, from Conley to Westbrook to Chark, a lot of very good pass catchers that do the things that Tampa Bay has not been able to stop all season long. So Nick Foles at 5,700. If he gets us 20 points, if he gets us 24 points, and 3 to 4x's this salary, that's more than enough, especially to combat those other quarterbacks that might get 30 or 32. 6-7 points, you can make that up elsewhere in your lineup. I'm going to take, especially with the savings of 13 to 1,500 from guys like Mahomes and guys like Jackson down to somebody like Nick Foles. If you can 4x this salary, that's more than enough for me. I'm plugging in Nick Foles at quarterback here for this first look. Now, getting to the priced up running backs, Christian McCaffrey. Yeah, I don't know why this lineup didn't come preloaded with him. I've written DraftKings many emails asking them to just, any lineup that I make, please, for first look, can you just force Christian McCaffrey into it, because nobody has been as good as him this year. He is basically 20%, or averaging 20% more fantasy points per game than the second highest running back at this position. Like, it's absurd that he is averaging 32.5 and Dalvin Cook is like 20% behind him. There is a massive drop off, considering that you're going to go from 10-5 to 7-8 for Nick Chubb against Pittsburgh. He put up 9.2 points against them last time, did not catch any balls, did carry it 27 times, carried it 21 against Miami, did have 4 targets, which is a little bit reassuring to me that he had 4 against Buffalo, 4 against Miami. This game against Pittsburgh looks more like an outlier than anything else. He's the workhorse back here. Kareem Hunt is playing the change of pace role. He did kind of vulture him for a touchdown, but 28 points against Miami was kind of expected, and he did great. Now he's come down off that price because he's not priced up for that matchup, and squares off against Pittsburgh, who he almost had 100 yards against 2 weeks ago. It's going to be a very highly charged game because of the incident between Garrett and the quarterback, Mason Rudolph, who got benched yesterday. I don't know that I want to get involved here with Nick Chubb, at least not for first look. We'll have to monitor that as the week goes on. Derrick Henry is absolutely smashing everything that stands in his way with 32, 36, 24.9. Not your typical DraftKings back because he's not involved in the passing game, but tremendous usage with the touchdowns, 6 of them over the last 3 weeks. If you believe that he can continue this role, 7,600 just is not enough. If you want to come down off of that, off of that price tag for Christian McCaffrey, I personally don't. Leonard Fournette, I think, could be under-owned this week. I could be wrong. It's Monday. We'll have to see how things progress throughout the week. But like, if I think that everybody's going to go after the pass game and go after Nick Foles and want to play the receivers in Jacksonville, which means that Leonard Fournette is going to be the leverage play. I think you can play him in game stacks or team stacks if you're going to play Foles and Chark with Fournette. I think it's fine, especially considering how much usage he's getting in the passing game. 12 targets, 7, 6, 7. Yeah, there's a 2 here, but that's a blip against Cincinnati because he ran it 29 times because they didn't have to throw him the ball. 6 against New Orleans, 7 against Carolina. He's getting a massive amount of usage in the passing game. and he's just a different back than he's been in the past. There's been an extreme progression with his game where he has blossomed into a guy that can actually be an asset in the passing game, and he's getting a ton of usage on the ground as well. 25 to 30 touches is not out of play for him, whether they're winning this game or not. Yes, Tampa Bay has done a fantastic job of stopping opposing running backs, but if he gets 15 or 16 carries, we saw what Alvin Kamara did to this Tampa Bay team, getting 10 targets. If he gets 7, 8, or 9 targets against Tampa Bay, you're going to have to look out, because Leonard Fournette could be too low owned for that matchup. Saquon Barkley, my Twitch chat said before this is an absurdly low price, and they're almost daring you to take Saquon, but like, his usage hasn't been what we want. Green Bay has given up a ton of touchdowns to opposing running backs. They've been a team that we've streamed running backs against a lot this year. This looks like a great spot for Saquon in a price down situation. I don't know that I can get there in this lineup, but I will be getting there in a lot of different lineups with Saquon in week 13, just because this is an absurdly low price and the lowest price that we're going to ever see on Saquon Barkley. 7,900 previously, 9,000, 9,100, 89, 88 in a great matchup and at home. I'm not going to give a touch number here, but I'd be upset as a Giants fan, as a football fan, or as a fantasy football fan if Saquon Barkley doesn't have 22 touches or more, with 5 of them coming in the passing game against Green Bay for 7,400. If you're fading McCaffrey, if you just don't think you can get there, I think Saquon Barkley is a great play this week. Coming down the list, Josh Jacobs against Kansas City. We know that Kansas City has given up tons of rushing yards, and we know that Oakland is committed to getting the ball to Jacobs. And in week 2, he had 99 yards on 12 carries against them. Fantastic efficiency, and he's been more involved in the passing game recently. If you can swallow the road matchup in a game that they are big dogs, the total is high enough that he can make things happen. You know that he's going to get all the carries inside the red zone and inside the 5, the really high leverage carries for that team. If you think that he can get there, fine. But I think that there's a few running backs that are a little bit cheaper that I personally want to plug in. The first of which is going to be Williams here, Jonathan Williams, for the Indianapolis Colts, who in the absence of Marlon Mack has taken over the workhorse role. Got 13 carries for 116 against Jacksonville, got 26 carries against Houston, and 3 targets. If we're projecting that he gets around 20 touches, which is just the way that they run this offense right now, and Williams has been very effective and efficient in the 2 games since taking over here, give me Williams at 5,300. I think that there's a couple of other plays down here that are fine. If you want to play another Williams, you've got not that Williams, at running back Williams. I think that JAMAAL Williams for Green Bay has carved out a very viable role in this offense. I think that he's too low priced for what his role is right now, and specific to DraftKings, with as much usage as he's got in the passing game, you've got a really, really nice floor of maybe 7 points alone in the passing game. If he gets 7.5, if he gets 4 catches for 35 yards, that's 7.5 points. Does not count anything that he gets in the running game or if he scores a touchdown. So the paths to failure at 4,500 for JAMAAL Williams really aren't that many. I think that he's going to be a really, really high owned player this week. I'm personally opting for Williams for this first look, but I think that there is some very viable value there. And the other viable value play for me is Philip Lindsay, with explosive as he is, and him taking over the number 1 job, a number 1 role for the Denver Broncos, getting the inside the 5 work, getting 15 plus carries a week, and only at 5K, and somebody who can contribute in the passing game. And if you want to be a part of super small sample size theater, in the 2 games that he's played against the Chargers so far in his career, he has doubled his average fantasy points per game, averaging 26 fantasy points per game against the Chargers, but only 13.5 against the rest of the league. So if you want to take part in the narrative driven, super small sample size theater aspect of this game and say, well, for the matchup, he's great. I think that he's great based on the volume that he gets, based on the matchup that he has, based on the price that he's at, with very few paths to failure at 5K. Give me Lindsay, and I'll plug him in at the flex as they play the later game. Moving on to wide receiver. Tyreek Hill dealing with an injury, but Andy Reid is optimistic that he'll play this weekend if he plays. Obviously, I think that he's somebody we should have in tournaments, but 8,900 is an awful lot to pay for Tyreek Hill, especially on Monday with his injury status where it is. Godwin or Mike Evans? Flip a coin and pick one, because one but not both does great. Godwin has the higher floor of the two in the weeks where he doesn't completely go off because of the nature in which he's targeted in this offense with kind of the shorter targets, though he does have big playability. He's had the higher floor of him and Mike Evans, but Mike Evans has a ridiculously high ceiling. We've seen a 45, a 39. We've seen a 48 from him this year. And against Jacksonville, they haven't been that great on defense this year versus last few years. They're definitely living off of reputation at this point. Cooper KUPP, aka my son, needs to have himself a bounce back spot here. Hopefully it comes against Arizona. He plays the slot. Pat Pete is not going to chase him into there. So if Goff can get his act together, Cooper KUPP should have himself a good day. Davante Adams is just too cheap, y'all. He just is. You're getting way too much volume. You're getting like Michael Thomas type volume, but you're not having to pay Michael Thomas type prices when you roster Davante Adams this week against the Giants, who have not been a team that is exactly known for stopping opposing wide receivers. For 7K, this looks like an even better play in week 13 than Odell Beckham was at 7K against Miami in week 12. I expect him to be really, really highly owned. Not a free square, because I never think there's a free square at wide receiver, but the closest thing to a free square at 7K that you can get. DJ Moore has been an absolute animal recently, as we've seen him take a massive leap forward this whole season. And the last 4 or 5 games where he's at 9 targets, 10, 11, 15, 9, and finally got himself into the end zone twice against New Orleans. Now he squares off against Washington, who's had their troubles defending the pass. But in terms of DJ Moore, you also have Samuel on his team, or sorry, not Jalen Samuels. You have Curtis Samuel on his team, who's priced way down at 4,800 following 2 kind of meh games, even though he's been the one that gets more red zone usage. So you're saving 2K to come down to Curtis Samuel, and I think that if everybody's going to jump on that DJ Moore bandwagon, as he's been the one with more volume recently, he's been the one coming off of a 2-touchdown game. Now you're telling me that I can get Curtis Samuel at a much lower ownership with... It's not like all of a sudden he's not a big play threat. It's not like he can't play. It's just that DJ Moore has seen a rapid ascension. Curtis Samuel could come in at a lower percentage owned this week, and I love him for tournaments as well. So too low of a price on him, at least from my first look. I think that Keenan Allen is also a solid play. Again, paying for volume at wide receiver is never a problem. Coming off of a bye week here, playing against Denver, my issue is that Chris Harris is a very, very, very tough cornerback to beat. So if I'm going to take the path of least resistance, y'all can sing it with me. DJ Chark, do. Just plug him in. He's 6,600. I get the correlation with Nick Foles. I still have Adams. Massive touchdown upside here. Massive floor of targets here. Could things go sideways? Could Conley get himself into the end zone? Could Dede Westbrook maybe find himself into the end zone? Sure. You know, is DJ Chark an absolute sure thing? No. But he's not expensive enough to make me want to avoid him, especially considering the matchup that we've streamed quarterbacks and pass catchers against, and he is the #1 pass catcher for Jacksonville. Expect heavy ownership on him. We're going to have to find some value. I'm going to look to tight end first. To try and discern some value. We'll look at the high price guys first, but as I said, I'm probably going to go with a value tight end here. Travis Kelce, he's great. And he's been coming on recently with 2 20-point performances, double digits in what? Every game except one this year. Everybody's telling me how bad a year Travis Kelce's having. He's been consistent, guys, and he's been consistently good. So I'm sorry that he's only got 4 touchdowns and not 12, but like, this is the nature of the game. Zach Ertz, with all the injuries that they've sustained on the outside, has been an absolute target monster the last 3 weeks. Probably going to continue against the best matchup they're going to have all year against Miami. We'll see if the Eagles offense and Carson Wentz can right the ship here against Miami, who has basically been the cure to all that ails anybody. Against Baltimore, George Kittle came on with a big game on Sunday night against Green Bay. We'll see if at 6,100 he can continue that against Baltimore. This is going to be a very entertaining game to watch. I would probably not going to stack it. That might be a mistake. I'm going to have to think about that all week. It's one of the toughest decisions that I'm going to have, is how to deal with that situation, because both of these teams have really good defenses, but both also have offenses that put people in trouble and into tough spots. Hunter Henry coming off of the bye, another one of the high volume tight ends that have all been priced up now at 5,800. Since he came back from injury, he's done nothing but get tons of service. 9, 8, 6, 10, 7, 9. His targets in every one of these games, 3 straight games of mid-teens points, 13, 14.9, and 15.4. Scoring off against Denver. Denver's tough. This game does not really have a really high total. We'll see how that goes. But Andrews, again, Andrews is not running a lot of routes. He's in blocking about half the time. And when he does run routes, he's targeted, though. The problem is they don't drop back all that much. Lamar Jackson's only dropping back like 20 to 25 times a game. So there's not that many opportunities for Mark Andrews, but he's done a great job of being very efficient with those and turning a lot of them into touchdowns. And he's got some big play ability as well, with a 51-yard catch, 33-yard catch, 39-yard catch, 24-yard catch. So big playability, that's one part of his game, but also inherent to the offense that they're running there. And Lamar's been outstanding. If you want to pay up for him, fine. But I think that I prefer Hunter Henry at 5,800 or Darren Waller at 5,500 in another pace-up situation against Kansas City, where they're likely going to be playing from behind and have to throw it a ton to keep up. But all these guys have been priced up. Everett's the one that's in the flow chart position spot, playing up against Arizona, where they've given up tons of touchdowns. Don't at me if Higbee is the tight end that catches one this week, but we'll see what happens with that offense. Goddard has also seen an uptick in targets because of the injuries to the wide receivers, but not really getting downfield a lot, not really producing a ton with the catches that he's gotten. He did have a touchdown in week 11 against New England, but 7 catches for 32 yards just is not that great. That's like catch and fall down territory. Not exactly what I'm looking for, but maybe Miami changes that because they're just pretty much horrific on defense. Now, we do have Noah Fant. We're getting to the more athletic, cheap tight ends at this point. Noah Fant going up against the Chargers has seen a massive rise in his target share, now coming off of a game against Buffalo, and Buffalo is a team that really is tough against tight ends. Now he should see a bump up, even though the Chargers do play somewhat slow. Should see a bump up in his targets a little bit and see a little bit more efficiency, as he is a massive big play type tight end because of his athletic ability. So is Mike Gesicki. Found his way into the end zone this week. Again, somebody else who's getting a very solid amount of targets, but hasn't found a way to translate his hyper athleticism at the position into long touchdowns, you know, long of 11, 10, 12. And it's not like he doesn't have a quarterback that's going to push it down the field with Fitzmagic, who will challenge down the field. I don't know if it's scheme with Gesicki or if he's just not that talented an NFL football player, but he is that talented an athlete, just off the charts athleticism in every single category. Would love to see him get it going with the amount of targets that he's getting, but right now he's somewhat more of a touchdown dependent guy. But the chalk this week is going to be Jack Doyle. He's 3,300, and Eric Ebron's now on IR. There's nowhere else to go. He will probably play anytime they've got a tight end on the field. He's going to be the one guy that's out there. You'll probably see a little bit of Mo Alley Cox as well, but Jack Doyle is going to be uber chalk this week. He's going to be exceptionally highly owned because of the low price. It's not a terrible matchup against Tennessee. He has shown that he can do things in the past, although he has some very mediocre stat lines this year. All of these games are with Ebron there. Now with Ebron out, 9 to 12 points is now not anywhere out of the realm of possibility here for Jack Doyle, as they do utilize their tight ends a lot around the goal line. So Jack Doyle for me is the number one tight end from where we sit here, meaning that I'm going to have to find a value play at wide receiver. I'm going to take the guy that's gotten some usage inside the red zone and near the end zone. They've looked to him a lot on this offense that we spoke about earlier that is really trending upward. And that's going to be Demaryius Thomas going up against Cincinnati, who has been bad. Thomas had a touchdown called back this week that would have put him at about value for his salary. We can expect the same sort of usage from Demaryius Thomas, a solid amount of targets. Hopefully some better value opens up for us here. I know that he's the worst player in this lineup, but I'm okay with it to allow us to do everything else that we need to do. That leaves us with our usual 3K for a defense. I don't care who it is, whatever. That's going to be the lineup for this week for first look. Nick Foles, Christian McCaffrey, Williams, Adams, Chark, Thomas, Jack Doyle, Phillip Lindsay. I like the upside. I like the volume. I like the matchups. I think that we've got a really solid first look lineup for this week for week 13. So if you would take a second and drop a like on this video, I would greatly appreciate it. Please subscribe to the channel. Also ring that notifications bell. And until the next video, I'll catch up to you guys later. Bye.
He's a legend.